Okay, I'm here with Kurt Bell, and Kurt Bell has a YouTube channel and a book and a website, but I'll let him introduce himself. So, Kurt, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell the audience who you are and what you do.
Hi, Shea. Welcome. Yeah, my name's Kurt, as you said. I'm currently of Irvine, California, formerly of Shizuoka, Japan. So I used to be a part of the what was called the J-Vlog community back in the day. It was a loose collection of Japan-based YouTube content creators. Back in those days, it was more than just YouTube. It was really more of a community. We were interacting a lot in various different social media platforms, and we did a lot of interaction, and it had a very different feel to it. It kind of felt like a little club in a way. And then we had lots of people that participated, either in Japan or especially outside of Japan, that were a part of that community. And we would have annual meetups and the like. Some names you might be familiar with: Give Me a Flake Man, Victor. There was Hiko. There's Mully, a number of different people, and that was a part of my life for a long time. And I kind of became a part of that community, and as a result, my channel, my YouTube channel, um, got some minor popularity with people that were curious about Japan, and in particular, people that were curious about the countryside in Japan, the wilderness. I spent a lot of time exploring and wandering around in the mountains and along the seashore of Japan. In that process, I spawned a lot of different YouTube channels. I can't even remember all the names anymore, and I can't even find videos anymore. I don't even remember which channel they're on. They're all lost, but over 6,000 total. I remember I counted them up at one time. So there's a lot of videos out there. I am a married man. I've been married to the same woman. I've been with her for 30 years now. Been married 25.
Wow.
We've got a nearly grown daughter. Our daughter Emily is going to be 18 next month. And so I guess that means I won't need to sign those permission slips anymore that she sends home from school. She'll
Right?
be able to do it herself.
Yeah.
Um, she goes to school here in Irvine. She'll be graduating in the spring and starting her next phase of her life. Really, our story is Emily's story because in the last well, basically since the year 2000 or so, we basically had schemed Emily was born here to take our lives from, my wife's Japanese, so to take our lives from America to Japan to raise our daughter through her small years in Japan, to give her the Japanese side of herself. And then when she entered high school, we wanted to bring her back and make an American out of her, like we say. My personal ambition in all of that was to raise a child that had a Japanese heart and an American spirit. And to that end, we're almost finished with that project. So that brings me to what's next. I'm here in America now. I'm no longer part of the J-Vlog community. I really, I don't really have any. Japan feels like a memory of a really good book that I read, and it's something I reflect on, I look back on. But now my life is in a new book, and so my wife and I are now beginning the next stage of creating a new life for ourselves post raising a kid. As Emily goes off to start her own life, we're planning for the next, hopefully, if we're lucky, we've got another maybe 2 decades left before our health and our mental faculties and the life begin to falter. So I want to make the best of it. So I'm kind of, this podcast with you, Shay, today is kind of I've been basically undercover for, not undercover, but I've dropped off of the community scene for a couple of years, quite a few years. So this is kind of a big step for me because I basically have not been doing anything with anybody online for all that time. And it hasn't been because I haven't wanted to. It's just because my life and attention have been focused elsewhere. So hopefully you can help me to emerge from my little cocoon.
Well, great. Wow, I'm happy that I can have that opportunity with you. So, um,
Thank you.
yeah, that's there's so much to actually unpack from that. First off, you have actually been quite a big influence on me in terms of my life here in Japan. So, early on, I never really watched a lot of Japanese YouTubers when I first moved here, or even before I moved to Japan. which has been about actually it's I just passed the 10-year mark last month, so or
Congratulations.
yeah, 2 months ago.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
big.
yeah, it's crazy how time flies that fast, but um, it wasn't until after I had moved here, like I had moved here, and then I worked for a little bit. I moved back to America for a year, and then I came back to Japan. And it
Hmm.
wasn't until then that I actually found out about this whole community on YouTube. And you're the one that, out of all of them, that spoke to me the most because I started just before I even saw your channel. I started hiking with some coworkers. I climbed my very first Japanese mountain I climbed was Shibutsu in Gunma Prefecture. Like it's like the border of Gunma, Fukushima, and Tochigi, where I live in Tochigi, and I caught the bug. I caught the hiking bug from that, and since then I've just been going anywhere I can, you know. And then I found your
Wow.
channel where you just had as you said, you have like 6,000 videos. You have just countless amounts of hiking videos out there, and that drew me into it. But then you're sort of like a philosopher in a way. I mean, I wouldn't say that you rank up there with Socrates or anyone, but
I don't
but
think anybody does.
right, right. But I mean, you're bringing a different aspect to it when you're out on those walk and talks is kind of how I saw it. And um, not only can you show the beautiful nature that Japan has, but for me, like a lot of the stuff that you talked about spoke to me because I either for the most part it's things I already kind of believed in myself, but it was just someone speaking truth to what I already knew, and I was like, there are other people out there like me that think in similar ways, you know?
It's interesting how the wilderness does that. It has
Yeah.
a way of distilling out the nonsense, and rarefying the thinking to the point that you're speaking stuff that you probably wouldn't say in the company of others. But the funny thing is, when you got the camera on and you're out in the middle of the wilderness, you are in fact with those people. So it's like having a unique environment where you can say things that you might not say otherwise, that may touch base with somebody else, but when you come back to society, you probably never would have said those things.
That's yeah, that's very true. That's very true. You're right. It's sort of like a very conscious, very self-aware meditation
Yes,
when you're hiking. You know, because
yes.
you have to be hyper aware of your surroundings so you don't trip or you don't run into anything that could endanger you. But at the same time, you have a lot of time to self-reflect.
And you know what else, Shay? What's important in that? And this might be getting ahead of myself, but you need to be alone for that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
find that I find that in the company of others, you might as well be dragging the whole city along with you, because the whole architecture, the whole infrastructure of the mind that basically that distracts us from those, from, for lack of a better term, deeper thoughts, tends to follow us out there. If we go alone, then it kind of strips away, and you're left with yourself. And if it's kind of spooky, and sometimes those talks I would have with myself in the mountains of Japan were a way to dispel the fear that would rise in myself. And I even surprised myself by the things that I said when I was trying to make the fear go away.
right, right. You're so right on that. Most of the hikes that I've been on have been alone, but there've been a few that I've taken with other people, and you're right. It's a very different. It's very different when you're at it alone, because
It,
you're just faced with nature and yourself, and
it's interesting,
you
Shay,
got to deal
because
with that.
it is, and you're right, and it's not to disparage hiking with others or socializing or things like that, because that's a very pleasant thing in its own right. It's like having a fine dinner in a particular type of restaurant versus maybe having a nice meal at home alone with yourself, or whatever the case may be. They're two different types of things. But I find that there's some people that aren't interested in that. They would rather just have the company. I get some email from some people I remember back in Japan, that would write and say, why don't you just want to share this with others? And that's true. There is a beautiful thing about that, but there's also something to be said for facing it on your own and uncovering sides of yourself that you may not know were there, and sometimes that you may not want to know were there.
Right.
But in the end, it's a good thing to find out.
No, I mean, to me, that's been the best part of it is just reflecting on things that have been on my mind
Mm.
and meeting those challenges that I've had to face.
Wow.
Because I mean, just a personal opinion of mine is conquering my own challenges and fears has been not only the most challenging aspect, as opposed to facing external fears that I've had, but it's also been the most rewarding. So those type of even small hikes, like I'll just take like even if it's like a 2 or 3 hour hike, just a short distance away, those days I still remember each hike that I've been on, even if it's been just a close hike.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
Hey, I've got to ask you. So
yeah.
out there in the mountains, have you run into any giant hornets?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Tell
Tochi,
me.
yeah, you have a very famous video on YouTube about the Suzume Bachi, and
Oh, the one on the finger.
yeah, yeah, and it. I actually have a really funny story. A few years ago, I used to work at a Japanese kindergarten, and we had the playground of the school was this like mini forest that they had. They even called it the Shizen no Mori. So it was just like it was actually really cool. If I was a little kid, I would have loved to have had a playground that was just a forest, But being that they had
It could be dangerous.
yeah, they had problems with these hornets every
Yeah.
summer, and I remember arriving to work one morning, as before I even had my car. It was when I still rode my bike everywhere, and um, I was parking my bike along the side of the school, and another one of my coworkers was crouching down near the fence, and I was just like, "Hey, what's up?" And he's like, "Check this out," and there was yeah, and as you know, the praying mantises in Japan are quite large, like
Hmm.
at least comparative to the ones in Texas. They're much bigger. I've
Mm.
noticed. And anyway, there was a praying mantis and a Suzume Bachi, and they were fighting. They were having a duel, and I literally watched the Suzume Bachi rip the praying mantis in half and then fly off with half of it. And it was since
Wow.
then I was like, okay, these things they mean business.
Do your viewers know what a Suzumebachi, what a giant hornet is, in terms of like how big they are compared to normal hornets?
I've never actually discussed these things. I may have brought the name up in a previous video, but I've never actually discussed what they are. If anyone is curious, I encourage them to check out your video because you show them to scale of exactly how big these things are, and they're just
But just
imagine a hornet on steroids is basically what they are, right?
just to let them know, it is the world's largest hornet. Now there are close contenders. There are second and third largest hornets that are close in size, but this is the biggest hornet in the world, and perhaps one of the most aggressive and quite deadly in terms of their venom and also their swarm tendency to release pheromones when they're disturbed and to come after people in mass. And they are the number one killer of people in Japan, besides snakes and bears and anything else. So they're quite a threat when you're hiking. So Shea, going out into the alone into the wilderness like that is quite a dangerous thing. So you of course know how to avoid them, know to avoid dead trees and
Right.
things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, Suzume Bachi are the one thing I've noticed that they don't put the warning signs up. They warn you of bears. They warn
And
you
boar.
of wild boars, the
Yep.
inoshishi, but they
Yep.
never mention like the hornets that might be out there, and those
Yeah.
are quite dangerous.
Have you had any close calls? I don't mean I'm sorry to make this the Hornet podcast, but have you had any close calls?
No, actually, I've been quite lucky. I've never been stung by anything in Japan. I've been stung plenty of times back home in Texas by yellow jackets and
Oh
bees
yeah.
and whatnot. But yeah, I've been lucky here because I've certainly seen them up close, but I've never had a negative encounter with these things. So
Well, be safe out there. Be careful.
I will. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
So yeah, every summer I think about that. I'm walking out there and I'm thinking, okay, I might see a bear, I might see a wild boar, I might see some hornets.
This is this is the worst time of the year right now. We just entering the worst time, late September, early October, mid October, because the queens are dying, the nests are dying out, and they're in hyper aggressive right now. So they be really careful in late fall, early winter.
That's good to know. I actually did not know that. So that's I always thought their height was probably midsummer, but you're
Yeah, they're
towards the end of the summer. Then you're right. Okay.
yeah yeah.
Yeah.
Well, don't wear black. They don't like that.
Okay. Oh, that's another new information. So I'll wear lighter colors. And actually, probably lighter colors are probably best when hiking out in the forest because you're very visible, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember probably the scariest moment that I can remember in Japan, and actually this is recorded on video. I do have it on video. Was hiking up a trail and coming face to face with a baby wild boar,
Wow.
and standing right in front of me. And of course, you know, where baby is, mother can't be far, right?
Right. And
And I
mothers will defend that baby
Yes,
very
and
well.
then and only a few months before that, three men had encountered a wild boar in that same area, and it had attacked them and killed one of them, gored one man to death, and
Really.
seriously injured the other. I turned around and I ran like you couldn't believe down that trail, and then I ran off the trail right into a Suzumebachi nest.
Oh wow.
And then, but I fortunately I had stopped just before that, so I had
Yeah.
stopped and I hunkered down because I had heard honeybees. And what was happening? This story just gets more amazing
Yeah.
because I had heard honeybees because I stopped and there was a honeybee hive and I stopped and I was looking around and the honeybee hive was in the process of being attacked by Suzumebachi. You know how they do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
The
They.
Suzumebachi will come in, swarm the honeybees, dispatch, kill all the honeybees, and then take away the larvae to eat. So it was a threesome. It was a wild boar encounter, a honeybee encounter, and a Suzumebachi attacking honeybees encounter. And it's all on video somewhere out there. I got one of those videos. I had the camera running when it happened.
Wow. Well, yeah. I actually have not seen that, so I'm gonna try and search through the archives for that one. So.
Good luck. It's probably on the Real Japan Monsters channel, if anything. But I
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
remember.
I would imagine. Yeah. You have. How many channels do you actually have?
So
Because
the last time I tried to count, there were 20.
20 channels.
Yeah.
And I thought Give Me a Flake Man had a lot of channels with his
Yeah, he has a lot too.
yeah, yeah. And wow, so that's crazy. So yeah, I mean, you have just a treasure trove of just interesting encounters with nature out there on top of like the philosophy focused channels as well, right?
Yeah, there's one channel that has that kind of, I don't know how I'd call it, if I'd be so complimentary as to call it philosophy, maybe Mad Mountain Musings. But I after a while, because I was doing that on the softypapa channel, which is the main hiking channel, and I found that I was doing these long rambles about life, the universe, and everything, and I was realizing this is kind of weird. People aren't signing up for this. They want to see the mountains and the rivers and the waterfalls, right? So I created another channel called Lyle's Brother, where I began to take those videos and segregate them away. So all of those kind of musing videos are tend to be on the Lyles Brother channel, which I look back and I kind of think of that man that did those videos as kind of kind of quaint, you know, because
Hmm.
I feel like I've moved on from that part of life, and there was a kind of an optimism and a buoyancy to those videos that I wouldn't say has disappeared, but it has been tempered by what I found here in back in America. What I found out in the desert has shaken me deeply, and changed me greatly. And I look back in Japan almost like a very, like I don't want to say immature, but it was like a calm before the storm period
In,
of my life.
that's very interesting that you say that because um, I it's always been interesting to me that you transitioned from hiking in the Japanese wilderness to just going out into the desert and as I'd mentioned a little bit before we started the podcast that I took that road trip to the Southwest U.S. about 12 years ago now, and ever since then I've loved that area of the U.S. I've always tell myself if I ever do move back to the U.S., it's the American Southwest that I'll want to live in because to me it just speaks to me, speaks to my heart. out there. You know,
Wow.
I've been there a few
Wow.
times, and it's you know, I
Mhm.
went there last year. I went to Colorado last year just by myself for 11 days, and I explored the entire state just hiking around, and it was great.
Wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah,
there is something out there that is magical and also terrifying at the same time at at a level that Japan couldn't even approach.
you're right. Japan has its own beauty and magic to it. You know, it's very different than the desert, but
It is. The way I think
yeah,
about it, it's funny because you can't really. It's. I think it's wrong to anthropomorphize nature with the culture in which the humans are living there because, as you know, in Japan, humans are, even though there's a lot of them there, they're clustered in just small regions. I mean, like 10% of the landmass, 90% of Japan is practically deserted wilderness.
right.
Um, but there's the mountains of Japan have taken on the temperament, in my mind at least, of the Japanese people themselves. They are very tame and disciplined, even though they're beautiful and rugged and dangerous. They're very tame and disciplined and civilized
Yeah,
compared to the desert of the Southwest, which is which is raw and empty and forgotten and quite intimidating and fearful in ways that the Japanese, I was never terrified in Japan. I am legitimately terrified in the desert.
that's both terrifying and comforting at the same time to know that.
Yeah.
You know, because
I have literally run to get away from the desert from what I find out there. Literally physically ran back, hopped on the motorcycle, gathered my gear, and got the hell out of there.
that's very interesting, and you've documented some of that on your channel recently, or at
Yeah,
least since you've been back, right?
not really. Not that part. I talk about it in my book, but I don't talk about it. And it's not anything supernatural. There's nothing out there that I'm not running from ghosts or monsters or anything like that. It's something that I call the great indifference, which I talk about in my book,
Hmm.
and which is the emptiness of the universe that is not apparent in Japan. In Japan, it's the very fecundity of nature, the water, the greenery, the cicadas, all the animals, the comfort of the Japanese people masks all that. But in the desert, in the deep desert, when you're 1 or 2 days out from civilization, all alone, without any roads or maps or trails or anything out there, you encounter an emptiness out there that, if you're not ready for it, um, will scare the crap out of you. And
Yeah,
it does, and it scared the crap out of me many times. And I have to work up the resolve and the courage to go back every time.
I can imagine. Even when I went to Colorado, I was still in, I guess technically a national park, but I went so far off the trail that I had I had about 4 liters of water that I blew through, and I was out there and I ran out of water, and I just realized once I ran out of water, I'm not even near the goal that I set for myself, and I'm still hours away from where I started. What should I do? Should I go back or should I just keep going? And that's an issue I had to debate with myself whether it was safe or not to continue. You know, and it was quite frightening, but I can't imagine doing days worth of travel like that. You know.
And it's not a function of fear for one's life. It's not a factor of thinking that I'm so far away from safety. It's and this is where it gets kind of weird.
Hmm.
It's kind of, and if it can bring back that word philosophy, it's almost the better word is existential. It's almost an existential dilemma of realizing just how empty the universe is,
Right.
and how the only caring, the only love, the only support and comfort that we're going to find is from one another,
Hmm.
and that the universe just doesn't give a damn.
Yeah.
And that is the terror. That is the terror of recognizing. That's why I call it the great indifference. It's the great indifference of the universe to whether I survive or whether any of us do, whether this planet goes on. That's why I race back, hop on my motorcycle, ride 200 miles back home, throw open the door, run inside and hug my wife and daughter and say I love you, because I realize the only love I'm ever going to get is from my own species, my own kind, my own family. There's none of it out there in the desert.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm sure your wife and daughter are so happy that you go out on these little adventures, you know.
That's a funny thing. That's actually been a consistent theme. Well, it's interesting. I don't. Maybe I'm misreading the sentiment. There's
Mm,
because I think there's two ways that can go. The one, and forgive me if I belabor this point too much. The one is, over the years, all these years I've been making these videos, the one constant theme I get is, what about your family? Because
right.
it seems like I'm neglecting them as I go off into the wilderness. But the reality, which is the sentiment I think you were alluding to, is that it makes I go out every 2 weeks for one overnight. That's my schedule. I've been doing that for a decade or
Mm-hmm.
more. Um, when I come back so enraptured and enamored of my family that they almost get sick of it, because I it changes me.
Right.
Whereas I might be at risk of taking them for some degree for granted if I didn't go to the desert. If I go to the desert, there's no chance of that. So yeah, I guess they do appreciate it.
You know, I understand. These little trips you take out there makes you appreciate what you have when you
Yeah.
come back. You're right, and to me, I need that. I need to get away every once in a while, or else I start to, I don't know, like things become, I become complacent, and when I become complacent, that's when everything else starts to unravel. And when I take this time out just to be by myself out there, it it brings me back to what I know is what's important, and what I appreciate in life. You know.
The writer Nathaniel Hawthorne,
Mm-hmm.
who was a early 19th century American dark romance writer. He
Right.
wrote, of course, The House of Seven Gables, Scarlet Letter. He spoke of this in the House of Seven Gables. He talked about the need of the poet upon their flights into wherever the poet goes, to want to come back and to not alight upon a lonely world, but to have a companion. And it's interesting because he even observed. He said that companion doesn't necessarily need to share that poet's mind, or to have that interest. Even he said, just to have someone to come back and to be with. And what he was trying to describe was this strange way that sometimes the poet seems to match themselves up with the domestic, in a way,
Mm,
for lack of a better term,
yeah.
because they seem to offer each other kind of a complementary thing. And the domestic helps the poet to have a home, and the poet helps the domestic to reach heights that they might not otherwise find on their own.
Right. Right. It's very complimentary, and
Yeah.
that's why I like to study and mix different take what I can from different philosophies, both Western and Eastern, and sort of what I feel best fits my own thinking originally. And a lot of Chinese Taoism kind of fits that. You know, it's that balance of, the black and white, the yin and yang. Like you can't have one extreme without the other, sort of thing. And I've found that, especially going out in on these hikes, that the contrast of nature and being back in the civilized world, and as you said, like even if the person or the thing you come back to has a different way of thinking than you do, it's there for you. It complements, it complements you. You
Yeah,
know.
that's exactly right. And it's a strange, I'm uncomfortable talking about this subject, because a little
Mm,
bit, because it makes it sound like I'm saying that there's the lofty poet and the lowly domestic. And I don't mean it
right.
that way.
Right.
I'm just kind of illustrating what I found from my own marriage, which is reinforced in my readings of others, that in my own marriage, I'm married to a woman who is not interested in any of these things. Yet
Hmm.
she is a very intelligent, profoundly deep thinker. But she's not interested in any of things. But I give her the the vicarious experience and the stimulation and the enthusiasm when I come back from my adventures that she wouldn't be able to get on her own because she's not interested in that, but she enjoys it in a way. And she provides for me the domestic warmth and comfort of a home and a family that my life would frankly be far less without. And you know how it's hard to talk about this without almost applying some values to it, and I don't mean to
Right.
do that. I just mean to say that we found each other, and it works really well. So in terms of my coming back to the adventures, she really does appreciate that.
Yeah.
Although she tells
Yeah.
although she tells me sometimes that she likes it when I'm gone because then she can lay up because I go to bed early. She can lay up in the bed late and read her books.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. Hey, it's both beneficial for her to have her time as well, and then when you're back, she appreciates that you're
Yeah.
back as well. So it works on both ends. And now, just to give a little bit of history, has before you moved back to America this last time,
Mm.
you had lived in America before with your wife. Is that correct?
That's right. So
Yeah.
Yumiko and I have been together for 30 years, like I said before, and 15 of those years have been spent here in America, and 15 of those years were spent in Japan.
Okay.
So we met in college in 1987 here in California, and we she spent 15 years living here in California.
Okay. Okay. So she's very well adjusted to
Oh yeah.
living in America or a foreign country as opposed to never having left Japan and
Oh
then
yeah.
and then moving there.
She's as home here as anybody else. She's certainly not American.
Right.
She's certainly 100% Japanese, but her English is perfect, and her understanding of our culture is profound and deep. Um, I and I know I'm diverging just a little bit, but I do want to compliment my wife. She is the wisest person I've ever known. She is my sage. She is profound and very deep. So contrast that with the domestic thing I just said, and try to balance those. It's an amazing thing that she is. So she has figured out America, and she is very comfortable here. And frankly, she wants to stay. So we talk about we're 10 years out from retirement. We're going to be retiring in on December 19th, exactly 10 years from now.
Okay.
And we were talking about where we're going to go, and I'm telling her sometimes, hey, maybe let's go back to Japan. And she's like, nah, I want to stay here. So she likes it here.
Yeah, I mean, I you it's funny you say 10 years. I've been in Japan for 10 years, and I wouldn't not be here if I didn't love this country, but I almost feel as that I need to, to me Japan is just as familiar almost as living in America now, and it's almost as if I need to explore somewhere else. um, I don't plan on leaving Japan anytime soon, but I do have that urge, that itch to explore completely new places that I did 10 years ago when I came here, So
Yeah, we
it,
do. You're one. I recognize you. I'm part of your tribe. I mean, there are those of us. I want to live. I want my book. I want my life to be a book with many chapters
yeah.
and many episodes. And I'm the type of person, and my wife is the type of person too. She and I are the exact same way in this. We we kind of grow a little bit weary of a life after about 5 or 10 years,
Hmm.
and we decide together to change it. We tend to do it very dramatically. We tend to dissolve away completely one life, and then just grab a couple of suitcases and go start a whole new life. And we probably got that about one or two of those left in it. Sounds like you're ready for another one.
Yeah, and I've with my girlfriend now, she's never really she's left Japan at least once, and this was just in the past few months. So,
Hmm.
and she's not ever opposed to leaving Japan. She just hasn't had the opportunity to do so yet. So, um, working on that. We'll see how that goes.
That's
But
yeah, that's the challenge. I've never really known anybody who's regretted that, even if it didn't turn out so well. Um, and I've known some people who those episodes are not so well. But by gosh, you looked at it in hindsight, decades later, you tend to tend to have so many fascinating, interesting stories to tell,
Oh yeah.
and your life seems to be so rich and filled, and you know what? You don't get that chance again, you know.
My regrets, I would rather have regrets on things that I've decided to do and gone through with and then regret it than regret not doing it in the first place.
Can I just take a momentary aside, and I want to share with you, if you don't mind, my experience over 10 years in Japan as a content creator, getting contact by people abroad asking me these very questions. And
Sure, sure, yeah. Go ahead.
thank
This
thank
is
you.
exactly what I'd like to hear as well. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So the book that I wrote, Going Alone, has a chapter in it called The Path of Wildness. And I actually wrote The Path of Wildness, that chapter, in Japan in response to over a decade of having young 20-somethings, typically young men in their early to mid 20s, writing to me or contacting me online to say, how did you do this? Because what they would see my videos. They would see me living in Japan. I had a Japanese wife and a Japanese daughter. I had a car and I was traveling in the mountains, and clearly I had a job, and I was making all these adventure videos, and they wanted something like that. They had this urge that they wanted more than whatever they were living in Middletown, America, Middletown, Canada, wherever they were. They said they wanted more, right? They were part of our tribe, you and me, because you're one of us as well, right?
Right. Right.
This lust that you feel. And they were writing to say, how do you do this? And I began, after a couple of years, I started to notice a pattern. And the pattern was this: I would respond and I would say, well, I kind of did this. First I did this, then I did that, and then I did this, and then I went for it. And I would get two types of responses back. The first response would typically be, and this is by far the more common one, people would respond back and then say, well, I could never do that, because I've got this responsibility. My mom would never like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what would I do about school? What about my career? Oh my gosh, where the heck would I live? What would I do about my visa? I don't have a passport. A long laundry list. I could almost enumerate them. There were about 10 things that people would always say to me. These are the reasons why I could never possibly ever do any of this stuff in my life.
Yes.
Although they wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I would I would keep up that correspondence, about 3 or 4 back and forths of me saying, well, have you considered this? Maybe you could go and get a passport. I mean, oh no, I don't have the time, or I don't even know where to start to get that. Eventually, they would disappear. I would never hear from them again. Right? I assumed that they didn't do it. I assumed that they basically went back to whatever life in Middletown, America, or Middletown, Canada was laid out for them. Whatever that safe track was, and this momentary dream that they had, they've given up on it. And I felt that that was a sad thing, because I feel that 20 or 30 years down the road, they're likely to have some serious regrets. Because as you just said, it's the things the risks that you didn't take are typically the ones that you mull on later in life. But now contrast that with the other side. Every so often, and I can probably count on one hand the number of times that this happened, one of those persons, I would say, well, I did this, and then I did that, and then the other thing, and then I went for it. And the other person would respond back, and they would say, I booked my tickets for July next year.
Aha. Yeah.
I'd be like, what? I said, wait, you booked your tickets? And I would write back, have you got a passport? Oh, I better, and they would write back, oh, I better get that together too, right? And what would begin?
That's
what would
awesome,
begin,
though. Yeah, yeah.
it was a great experience. What would begin is a long relationship. I'm still in contact with these people. In fact, I'm going to read you in just a second an email that I got from one this week. Okay,
Sure.
not
Yeah.
not an email. It's just a text message. What would begin is a long dialogue, and I'm still in touch with these people today. A long dialogue with these people as their adventure began, and they would start telling me the story of their unfolding events,
Mm-hmm.
and they did it. They did it. Now here, I just got to read this to you real quick. Here it is, right here. I got this text on Wednesday from one of those young men who started this process. He started this. I won't give his name out. He started this process. Gosh, it's been 7 years. He's in Japan. He's like you. He's in Japan now. He finished college and did it. He said sent me this text message. He says he was hiking. He said, I got lost on the trail for 3 hours, couldn't see the sun, got washed down the river, almost fell down the waterfall, lost my flashlight, and had to climb down ropes and chains with no light and pitch black. I was wearing a smartwatch, so I set the screen to bright and made it back. That was quite an adventure. Of course I was scared, but I was not panicking. I was only thinking of survival. I almost stopped to make a shelter and fire, but I had work the next day. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, he's he's more worried about his work than he is, surviving almost.
But let me just add
Yeah,
a little bit to this.
yeah,
In these stories of these young people, and it's young men and women both, but mostly young men,
yeah.
um, th- these things don't always work out for them. Some of them go to Japan and it didn't turn out so good. It
Mm-hmm.
really was hard. And so they've gone back and forth and they've on a, but to a man and a woman, I know that they are stronger, more confident and more interesting individuals for it. And if we can fast forward 1 or 2 decades when they're my age, they're going to be looking back with lots of interesting stories to tell, a rich, fascinating life to share, and a great example to their own children about how to live their dreams that come to mind, and not just put them aside because they don't have a passport, their mom wouldn't like what they're doing, what about their career, who am I going to marry, and all these things.
Right, right. And you know, for me, that was making that decision. I don't regret anything that I've done in terms of making the decision to move here, but life sure as hell threw me some curveballs at the exact moment that I was going to come here. I'd already booked my flight. I had my job secured. I had the passport. I had everything in check. 1 month, 1 month before I moved over here, my stepfather suddenly passed away, and it
Mm.
threw like, my mother was devastated, and she I, I wanted to be there for her, but I had all this, I had my future ahead of me, and I had a really, really tough month before I came. And at that funeral, at my stepfather's funeral, my grandfather, her father, pulled me aside and just said, "Don't worry, we'll take care of her. You do what you have to do." And I took his advice, and I did it. And less than a year later, he had passed as well.
Wow.
Yeah, and while I was here, and the fact that both of them had passed in less than a year, and I was gone. I My mother went through probably the worst time of her entire life, and I part of me felt like I was kind of abandoning her, but at the same time, I knew that I knew she was a strong woman at the same time, and I knew she would get through it, but I didn't. I didn't go back immediately, and it was a tough time, but I think for both of us, we both became sort of stronger, because for me, I was just finding myself. I was young. I was 23, 24 years old at the time, and I was just experiencing life on my own in a completely new country without knowing anything about it for the first time ever, and she was dealing with that. So we both had some pretty strong life experiences during that time period. So
But don't you think that this experience kind of will, if we just look at it for what it has done for you, it will give you a type of empathy and a caring and an understanding when others are suffering with difficult life choices and decisions, that will be more genuine, sincere than if you hadn't had this experience. Of
yes.
course, that's discounting how your mother's experience, and I don't want to do that. Right? That was obviously very hard for her and very hard for you as well.
Hmm.
But in the big picture, you are probably going to be able to pay this forward in a way, because you will be able to be more genuinely there for people, and at least an understanding, who are facing similar challenges in the future. And I expect that your mom, if she raised you as she did, to have the courage to be able to do this, would have wanted you would want you to do this as well. And a lot of it's probably your own sense of guilt that may or may not be shared by her.
Yeah, yeah. We've had long discussions over it over the years, and we've made peace with it all at this point. It's taken a while, but it was, there were some rough years there, and she came to Japan to try and understand why I did this, and for the
Wow.
longest time she could not understand it, because she was just used to, at least from my perspective, She was just used. She was content with being in the small town that she's in, and just living that life, and she couldn't understand why I would just, in her mind, just throw everything away and leave and come here. And I think now, though, after growing, both of us growing and talking and having long conversations, we both sort of both understand each other in that respect. So it's actually kind of it kind of separated us for a bit, but it's kind of brought us extremely more closer together than before. So
I'm glad to
yeah.
hear that. I'm sorry for the loss and the challenge that put both you and your mom through. I'm glad that you have both been able to reconcile that over time.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like I said, it's I don't regret any decision that I've made since being here. It's been tough, it's been very tough, but as you said, it's you look back and I have a very similar philosophy of life that you do. That your life's like a book, and you have different chapters in it, and you gotta write that story.
Yes, definitely.
So I wanted to kind of ask you a bit. So you've raised your daughter was born in Japan, or was she born in the States?
She was born here in the United States,
Okay,
in
okay.
Los Angeles area.
But she was raised for the most part in her younger years, because it's documented on your channel. She spent what the first 13 years in Japan.
We moved to Japan when she was 3, and she
Okay,
left when she was 14.
okay. So she spent a good chunk of her life already,
Yeah.
in Japan. So
Japan
you're
Japan has her first culture and her first language and her first home.
right, right. So her, as you said, her heart is
Yeah.
Japanese. Yeah,
Yes.
and now, so how long has it been now since your wife and your daughter have moved to America with you? Because there was a bit of a transition time where you guys were separated, correct?
Yeah, 14 months between when I
Wow.
arrived after I found a position here, a job here, and then 14 months for my wife to get her green card so that she could join us. My daughter, of course, is a dual citizenship, so she could come anytime.
Right.
Emily and Yumiko have been here with me now for 3.5 years, and Emily's at a point now where she's at a um, she's certainly not Americanized. She is certainly not a 100% an American, but from all appearances, she would appear to be. But there is still a Japanese girl peeking out through through an American's eyes at this point.
Yeah.
And but she likes it. She likes it here, so she's doing just fine. But I don't think she'll ever. I often wondered if bringing her over at the age that we did, which was I think just 14, I wondered if she would become fully American and lose her Japaneseness. And I think that the question is she will always be, remember like those Russian dolls that
Right.
stack one upon another?
Yeah.
The innermost doll will be a Japanese young woman. And then if the doll outside of that is the American veneer over the top of that.
Yeah. That's to me that embodies sort of the best qualities of both cultures. The Japanese heart, the American spirit,
Yeah.
and I think it's kind of funny you termed it as a project, because for her it's her life, but you're right, it is sort of a project in a way, and that
Yeah.
it's good that she's turned out how she has, because she's had the best of both worlds. I think.
I love Americans are wonderful people, and we have.
Hmm.
And I'm not leading up to a but I'm not leading up to that.
Right.
However, they really are. Americans really are wonderful people. I love our enthusiasm and our exuberance and our almost youthful vibrancy of life. And just, I mean, there are days that I'm here and I'm just like, wow, it's so good to be back, and the enthusiasm and the energy. And just like yesterday, I went to a coffee shop. Okay, I mean, I went to the coffee shop. It was a Panera Bread, and I ordered a medium cup of coffee, and the man gave me this enormous cup. And I said, "Oh, that's a medium. That's way too big. I'll take a small." And he says, "No, man. I just wanted you to have a large." And he was just charging me for a medium, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he just wanted me to really have a nice cup of coffee, and he
Yeah.
was just giving me a cup of coffee, just
Yep.
you know, and I was like, I just love this thing about this, right?
Mm.
And so I love that my daughter now has that. That's coming out. It's a little bit kind of shocking to my wife to watch that sometimes. She's like, wow, she's really behaving like American. But then it's also for me, I can see almost in stealth mode the little Japanese girl, within her, right? That comes through, and the little Japanese things that come through. You know what I'm talking about with the
Yep.
way the
Mm-hmm.
Japanese mannerisms,
Mm-hmm.
their attention to the very subtlest little details,
Oh yeah.
the the minute concern for the feelings and welfare of others that are part of their family, and the way that they will put themselves behind everybody else in very subtle ways, right? So I see these two things in play, and there's no negatives in any of this. It's just two different types of worlds with two different types of things, and
Right.
I see that alive in my daughter in both of them, and it makes it all worthwhile. I lost, I don't know, I won't go on and on, but I lost a lot going to Japan. I lost everything. I
Yep.
lost them. I made a video. I lost $1 million. I lost everything that I had. I lost my career basically. I'm still struggling to regain my career that I'd probably be in a management role at this point in my life. So I'd gladly pay all that again. I'd do it all again double,
Yep.
just to see those two things operating and alive in my daughter.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, you definitely made the right choice. That's you know, financial security and a cushy management position aside, that's very superficial compared to the value you get from seeing your daughter grow as she has. So
And you know what? And,
yeah.
and again, forgive me for going on and on about myself. That's really not a very Japanese thing. So, but there are times at work when there's a lot of things that are going on that are stressful and that are difficult and challenging, and the days can drone on and on and on, like just they do for all of us, right? It just goes on and on and on. It's just like grinding you down, the grind, right?
Yeah.
And I almost feel in a way kind of immune to the deep. It can't touch me deep inside
Hmm.
because I feel like I've already hit the jackpot in life in the adventures that I've had in 54 years and the experiences of living in Japan, of wandering in the mountains, of knowing strange and different ways, of coming back to America and exploring the desert. I could check out right now, and that's okay. The punchline has already been made. The joke has been told. The laughter is beginning to die down. It's time for it's time for the show can end anytime.
Right.
So, because sometimes if I didn't have that feeling like I've lived that rich, satisfying, adventurous life with my partner, with my wife, and my daughter, I would feel like the grind of work is like a distraction from the reward that has yet to come.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'm not waiting for that reward anymore. I've already got it.
Yep.
So you grind away to the end for the next 10 years. You can't get me because I can go out check out in a moment's notice. And I'm sorry, I'm sounding like I'm being rather self-congratulatory. I don't mean to be that way. All if the reason that I'm saying this is that I'm trying to put a point on the fact that there's something to be said for living your dreams early in life rather than postponing them for later, because
Yes.
later may never come.
Yep. Yep. And I feel very lucky that I've certainly had opportunities that I've turned down because I was too afraid. But I still feel, that I'm as young as I am, that I've been able to do the things that I've done, because if I waited to do it later, I might not have ever done it because I'd have all these responsibilities that I don't have now to take care of, and it'd be much more difficult to do the things I want to do then, as opposed to now, which I don't have so many responsibilities. So it's like I have no excuse not to do these things.
And you know what else, Shay? The man that you will be, because a lot of the man you will be 3 or 4 decades from now is not the man you will be anymore.
Hmm.
You, if you, if you postpone, you'll probably find yourself to be a more you won't be as courageous or adventurous. This is my friend. I just read that email.
Right.
You won't be able to do that kind of stuff. You probably wouldn't survive that stuff then,
Right.
right? And so you'll probably find that this is your only chance to live that as adventures the way you want to. When if you wait too long, that man will be gone, and that opportunity will be passed as well.
Right. Right. And that's it. Like I said, it's a lot of these things. I feel like I've always had these sort of thoughts in my head. It's just I encounter them in the real world of like, I know what that is, but someone's finally articulated it, and I get it. Um, One thing with I learned about this book long after I'd come here and actually put into practice a lot of what the book talks about. But have you heard of the book Vagabonding by
No,
Rolf Potts? Basically, his attitude towards traveling is have no plan. Just go somewhere and just experience it in the moment, because to kind of just break it down very very simply, it's if you don't have a plan, you'll never be disappointed with the results that you get. If you've very meticulously planned something out in detail, if something very minuscule doesn't go according to your plan, you'll be upset and you'll be focused on that and you won't have a good time. So
I
just
like that.
yeah. And actually, before I even heard about the book, that's how I approach travel. I never
Yeah,
liked planning everything down to the minute details, because for me, I always got frustrated things didn't go to that plan.
yeah.
So I just thought, well, if I don't make a plan, I'll never be disappointed. So
I love it. I
yeah,
love it. I love it. Everything you say, everything rings true with me as well. I feel the same way.
yeah, yeah. And it's like that trip I took last year to Colorado. I've harped on this so many times to people, and they're probably sick of me telling this, but it was so awesome to do that trip, because I didn't plan anything. All I did was the only thing I planned was the very first hotel that I stayed at once I got off the plane in Denver, and after that I didn't even know if I was going to stay in a hotel. I had a car that I rented, and at first I was extremely disappointed, and the only option I could get was this like huge cargo van with like two bucket seats in the front and then nothing in the back. And then I thought, hold on a minute, if I can't find a place to sleep, I can sleep in the I have all the it's like a mini room right in the back of that van. Like
Yeah,
I have my own traveling room with me. So that turned out to be one of the best options, honestly.
I love it. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah,
I love the way you think.
yeah. And and every morning I'd wake up and I'd just open the map and I'd say, okay, where in this state do I want to travel to next? I'd pick a spot and I'd drive there and just see what the day had in store for me.
That's
So
a beautiful thing. And
mm,
look where it wound up. You wound up in Japan,
mm-hmm.
having adventures and meeting new people and experiences and challenges and maybe in some ways, you and your mom have actually grown to know each other and get closer in ways that you may not have done otherwise.
I completely agree with that. I definitely think that we've been able to connect in a way that we wouldn't have if I just back at home. You
Yeah,
know.
and and this is going to sound a little strange, but just coming across the screen,
Hmm.
there's kind of a subtle peace that I can kind of see in your eyes that I think is a consequence of that as well, of that whole frame of mind, that whole willingness to take chances, to realize your dreams, and to not avoid the consequences, but to deal with the consequences and recognize that there are costs and benefits, not just benefits.
Right.
That all I can see that all in your face,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think I think you're on a very good course.
I'd like to think so, and
Yeah,
I thank you for just being a sort of the videos really helped me years ago when I was going through a lot of finding myself out in my early to mid 20s. I thought, this guy's just figuring it out as he goes along too. Like
yeah.
we're always learning. I'm sure you're learning something new every day as well,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
it just never ends. And that's actually the approach that I took with learning Japanese. Was when I first got here, was, I knew no Japanese at all. I just knew the food names pretty
Hmm.
much. And um, the approach I took was, I know I'll never be 100% native level because I didn't grow up here, but at the same time I'm still learning things in my own language. So it'll be a constant learning experience. So I didn't put that stress on myself to have like an end goal with learning Japanese. It was just sort of learn what I can and just enjoy it. And what that did was it motivated me to just incorporate it a little bit into my life every day. And I'm now able to, I'm not, like I said, I'm not 100% fluent, but I'm able to, do contracts negotiations for like my apartment. I'm able to do everything I could in my native
Wow.
language with it. I make mistakes, but at least I get my point across, and people understand that. So to me, that's a win.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. I'm so impressed, and I'm if it doesn't sound patronizing, I'm so proud of you.
Well, thank you. I mean, and it wasn't a fish to get a compliment. I thank you. I appreciate that. It was just that's just my attitude towards everything is towards learning in life now is just don't stress about the end result. Just enjoy the journey.
Yeah, and I didn't mean that to be a compliment. That just that kind of social back and forth. I
Yeah.
genuinely mean that. I mean, it sounds like proud of you. Sounds like kind of strange, but like I said, I've had so many experiences with people who have told me their dream, and so few of them who have followed through on it. And even though you and I didn't have that early back and forth,
Right.
you are one of those who face that same crossroads.
Mm-hmm.
The crossroads, and as the old adage goes, and I took the one less traveled, right, and it's made all the difference. And look at you, you've done it, Shay,
Yeah.
and you're still doing it. You're still a relatively young man.
Well, I'd like to think so. Yeah. I mean, but I to me it's exciting that there's still much. Hopefully, there's still much more that I can experience. So
I
hopefully.
I don't think you can go back now. The only concern that I would have, and again, I'm sorry to make it sound like I'm speaking from experience necessarily, but the only concern I would have at at, at, at your for a man in your situation in this state is two things. One, coming back to a place like this where people won't understand this,
Hmm.
and they won't under. I've encountered a lot of people who they don't understand the decisions that I've made in the past, and they look like kind of like what your mom was saying. It's like why would you give up the settled, the same, the secure? Like I
Hmm.
live in an apartment still. All my coworkers have houses. They're halfway through their mortgages, and they all look at me like, why the hell are you living in an apartment, Kurt? Right?
Right.
It's hard for me to say. Well, I kind of made some mistakes as a result of some risks that I took, but it was all worthwhile. But I don't say that last part. It just I just say I just that's the case. And the other part is the other part of that risk is you you may butt up against some pretty, like I have in the desert, some pretty scary stuff out there
Hmm.
that will will like the desert did to me and it continues to do to me. It might rock me to my core, but you know what? I wouldn't trade that for anything. That's the best part yet.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's like uh, it's like the Nietzsche quote, about looking into the abyss. You know.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Exactly. Actually, it's funny because I wrote a new. My book has like two or three layers of warnings at the front.
Yeah.
And I had lunch with a friend of mine who actually understands this stuff this week, and she was saying, "Kurt, you need to put another warning on your book." Because she read the book. I said, "Why?" Because she was telling me there are people that will read this and will may despair of life and commit suicide and that's because what I'm offering them in the book is a universe without meaning.
Hmm.
And if they're already predisposed to be depressed or unhappy or feel like they don't have a purpose, and here's this guy coming on with a book that's saying, yeah, actually, you're right, the universe doesn't have any meaning for you. But the funny thing is, the punchline in the book is that it's possible for us to create a life with meaning on our own.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if they don't get to that point in the book, then they'll just give up and
Well, I mean, did, I'm so glad that you're writing this book because that going alone title is perfect because I've always felt, even when I was back before I'd even made the decision to move away from my culture and everything, I always felt different, and I, even in a crowd, I felt alone,
mm,
and even now, even looking from the outside looking in, I've seen how America has changed in 10 years, and it to me, it's like watching a reality TV show unfold before my eyes of how
mm.
what America has turned into. And I don't want to get into politics at all, but it's so weird. I feel more outside than I have ever before, but at the same time, I'm the most comfortable with that feeling than I ever have been before. You know?
Interesting,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, and I think I can understand why you are, because you wouldn't be where you were right now if you didn't have the capacity to withstand that solitude.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I've come to peace with the fact that I'll always be outside of the norm, and I'm happy. I embrace it now. I enjoy not being, and it sounds sort of, I I know saying that to people who live their daily life in, I guess, a quote unquote normal way, it sounds a little bit like disparaging that, and that's not where I try to come across at all. I actually kind of envy people that choose to live a simple life sometimes because it's a lot more carefree. I mean, you don't. Uh, I don't know from personal experience, but the demons they face, they still everyone faces demons, but the demons they face to me seem different than the demons that I face, and um,
Yeah.
you know what
You
I
know,
mean. And
I do
again,
know
there's
what you
no
mean.
way to say that without making it sound like I'm
I know
disparaging it,
you
and
can't
and I don't mean
you
to do that. You know.
you can't get away from it.
Yeah.
You can't get away from it because it makes it sound like people who do the kind of stuff that we do as almost like philosopher poets going out and tackling the great
Yeah.
challenges of the mental world, and it's not that at all. It's a matter of interest. I mean, like I said before, my wife is one of the most intelligent, sagacious people I've ever known. She just doesn't give a damn about any of this stuff,
Yeah.
and she would just rather abide the standard stock normal things of life so that she can spend her time doing the stuff that she likes, which is playing her games
Hmm.
and going out and shopping and looking at clothes online, which to me seems kind of surface level stuff, again. But to her, that's what interests her. That's how she wants to spend her life.
Right.
That doesn't mean that she doesn't periodically turn to me and answer a query that I've been working on for 2 weeks with a simple statement that I couldn't have possibly come up with because she's so damn smart. That's what she's interested. So it's not a value judgment. It's just a where's your focus. And I like you. I kind of envy the folks that like that, but at the same time, that's their own way of doing it. It's not any better or less.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I completely agree with that. And I know you're short on time. You have a nice Sunday ahead of you, but
I do.
yeah.
Yep.
So I feel like we could just go on for countless hours just discussing these sort of things. But I know you value your time as well. So I'd like to just ask you one thing is
Sure.
what has been the most challenging aspect, and I know that's probably a super loaded question, but with the transition between going to Japan and back, what's been the most challenging aspect of that?
See. Uh, career,
Hmm.
career. Finding my footing in my old career because I was on a career track that I took it in. I work in the IT industry. I'm a project manager, and I took a 10-year break from IT to go to Japan. And as you know, IT is moves 1 year is like dog years, right? I mean,
Right.
it completely changes. And it's taken me. I've been back for almost 5 years, and I am just now catching up with where I should have been. So it's been one humiliating, embarrassing, challenging month after another for 5 years, realizing just how far behind I am professionally and working to catch up. Career, but definitely has been the hardest.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's an aspect of it that that can definitely be quite a challenge. So, if you, I usually ask this of all the guests if they can give one last bit of advice or not even advice but just some sort of saying that they'd like to tell the audience to do so. But I feel I don't know with you. There's so many things that you could probably say and it wouldn't be even the tip of the iceberg. But
Oh, I'll finish with the last line in my book, which
okay.
is be safe, but not too safe.
There you go. Great. And to finish off, that's actually that's more profound. It's such a simple statement, but it's very profound. So I encourage everyone to read your book, Going Alone. It's on Amazon, correct?
That's right.
Yeah. So I'll leave it to you to plug your book and your YouTube channel and website, whatever
All
you
right.
you want to do. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. So thank you, Shay. So actually, I have a copy here. Here's this is the book Going Alone,
Hmm.
by yours truly, and it is. I still can't get over the fact that it's like surreal because I never thought I'd
Right.
write a book.
So
So and
paperback, it's real. It's
yeah,
tangible. So
it's a real thing.
yeah.
It's amazing technology is that way. So but this is a result of 5 years worth of effort between Japan and America to try and capture the experience of Japan in terms of the aforementioned experience of facing down the life that you want to live and making the choice to live that life or not. And then, furthermore, the what I encountered here in America that I call the great indifference, the thing that or the thing that I did not encounter because it's an emptiness out in the desert, and basically how to face that down and choose to build a life of meaning in a universe that apparently has no apparent meaning. That's what the book's all about. It's available on Amazon. I will have a website that is going to be going live for the book probably within the month. And I'm going to be doing various things. I'm having blogs out there as well. But yeah, check it out if you like. I'd appreciate it. It may not be for everybody. I'm sure my wife wouldn't have any interest in it at all. And she'd probably be, if she chose to get to read it, she'd probably be able to give me all kinds of tips and trick and pointers to make it better.
Right, right. And of course, you have 100,000 different YouTube channels, but your main
Yeah.
channel is softypapa, right?
Softypapa, but don't
Okay.
go there looking for Japan because I don't make it. You can look through the archives. I've got lots of, but now all I'm making is really some weird motorcycle riding videos, talking in the helmet. It's nothing like it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what's so to me is so cool about that channel is it's like a book in itself. It's different chapters. You have your Japan chapters. Now you have your California
Well,
chapters.
I decided no more channels. It's all just one channel.
All just one
So
channel. Okay.
wherever my interest or my life takes me, all the videos for that are going to go on that channel. So if you signed up for Japan, I apologize if you're not getting that anymore. And if you signed up for motorcycle adventures, I'm sorry if I change and do something different in the future.
Right, right. But I do encourage everyone to search for the My Suzume Bachi video.
Yeah.
That actually went viral, right? So it's
It did. That was
yeah.
that was a drunken. I was actually drinking at home, and I had a dead suzumebachi, and I just took some photos from my friends and wound up with a viral video. So,
Well, there you go. So that's good motivation for anyone. Really, is just hey,
yeah,
if this sort of video can go viral, then have at it. So
that's right.
Kurt, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, I think we could talk for hours, but your time is valuable as well.
Thank
of
you.
course it is. So,
You too.
yeah,
Yours is too.
yeah. Thank you
You
so
need to
much.
get to bed.
Thank you, thank you. All right, I appreciate it, and hopefully we'll speak in the future as well.
I'm looking forward to it. I'll be happy to join you anytime, Shay.
Okay, thanks, Kurt.
Bye bye.
Bye.